Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our webinar, Maximize Efficiency and Profitability in Your Distribution Operations, Smart Automation within Microsoft Dynamics GP, presented by Cavallo. My name is Jody Keller, and I'm the Product Marketing Manager here at Cavallo, and we are very glad you joined us today. The format for today's webinar will be a 45-minute presentation, including a demo, followed by a Q&A session. Please feel free to ask questions throughout the presentation using the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen. We will do our best to answer all the questions at the end of the presentation. And a reminder that today's webinar is being recorded. You will be able to view it on demand using your registration link at any time after the webinar. We're very excited to have Mike Raden from Cavallo with us today. He'll be discussing ways to improve your business by automating critical processes across the customer to cash cycle. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to our presenter to introduce himself and kick it off. Take it away, Mike.
Yeah, thanks for the introduction, Jody. As you mentioned, my name is Mike Raden. I'm a senior sales engineer here at Cavallo. I've been here about 2 years now. And my role is really to understand prospect and customers' pain points, gaps, or requirements, and help demonstrate how Cavallo can increase efficiency and add value, making those businesses more profitable. Just a little bit about me outside of work. I really enjoy golfing, hiking, and playing pickleball. And these are just several pictures from national park trips my wife and I take every year that we really look forward to. For today's agenda, we're going to do a quick overview of Cavallo, who we are, and talk more about what I'm going to be showing today. Then we'll talk a little bit about customer success. We'll jump into the demonstration, and of course, we'll have time for questions and answers at the end. So a little background on Cavallo for those who might not be familiar with us. We were founded in 2003 and are excited to be celebrating our 20th anniversary this fall. We've served over 1,000 customers and have 23,000 plus active users. And you might be more familiar with our former name, SalesPad, but we rebranded to Cavallo a couple years ago. SalesPad is still the name we use for our desktop application that sits on top of Dynamics GP, but as we added more modules and started expanding into other ERPs and products, we just started to outgrow the name. You can see in the background here, Cavallo's SalesPad wheel of products and all of the different areas where we add value for Dynamics GP. But today we're going to be focusing on a key area of workflow and automation, and specifically workflow for GP. What is workflow for GP? Workflow allows you to configure different queues or batches to match the process flow for your sales documents. SalesPad by Cavallo software sits on top of GP with a shared database, so is writing and reading in real time, so there's no syncing necessary. Some of the functionality you get with workflow is making sure that documents have proper visibility by the proper teams and you have full accountability. Making sure that your business rules are being followed and forwarding documents to the proper place in your process. And lastly, automating tasks like emails, printing, margin checks, and much more, which we'll show later. Cavallo Workflow for GP was built for users who live in GP to have access to the functionality and power of workflow in SalesPad. So what do our customers say about workflow? Here are a handful of quotes. I'm not going to read the full quote, but you can take a look at them as we're talking through this. But Chadwell Supply, one of our customers, said they're able to get paid quicker and assign clear accountability internally. As soon as a customer owes money after a certain point of time, they can direct that order, that customer, to a specific queue and make sure that's followed up on, getting them paid more quickly. C. Bennett was able to support 80% growth without increasing headcount, and they attribute that to workflow and automation. And lastly, TKO Electronics believes that they would need a significant amount of additional employees to handle their order volume if they didn't have workflow in place. Excuse me. And these customers span across all different industries, just like all of our customers do. We have HVAC, building, construction, supply, and consumer goods represented here. So it just gives you a good idea of all the different types of customers that we work with. Some of the challenges that we often hear that workflow helps to address are lost and delayed orders and invoices. And that could be from manual handoffs, manual processes, or just missed business rule execution. Another is no clear system for tracking documents and assigning responsibility across teams. If things are being handed across desks manually, or they're being forgotten about. Some of these things start to get delayed. Third is a lack of automation in few electronic processes. We know a lot more businesses are looking to be eco-friendly, be more paperless, have a systematic approach to tracking all that information. And then fourth is just the inefficiencies and limited productivity that lead to time waste that could be spent on other value add or creative activities for your business. So that was our quick introduction, and we're going to go ahead and hop into our demo today. Before I pull up the software, I wanted to pull up a visual representation of what workflow looks like in a diagram format. So what we're looking at now is a visualizer tool that shows an example workflow that I built. Every business is going to have different business rules and automations they want to set up to match their processes, but the way they work will be much of the same. As you can see, there are some different numbered queues and batches I have in this workflow that we're going to be showing today. So of course, we're going to start in a new order when a customer places that order. Ideally, in a perfect order scenario, we're going to come around and then allocate to that order so long as we have the inventory to do so. Then we would move into a pick ticket print, be ready to pick for our warehouse team, and then finally move to our shipping, and then over to ready to invoice. But you can see there's a lot of other things going on in this workflow. Those are the different automations and business rules and actions we want to take throughout the life cycle of a sales document. So let me go ahead and pull up GP so we can start to take a look at this. So with workflow for GP, security, access enabled, there'll be a couple different points where you can interact with workflow for GP. The main one is going to be in the sales transaction entry window. So I'll go ahead and click that. What you're going to see is there's going to be a bolted on window here for the sales transaction entry window screen. And there's going to be two tabs, a sales document search and a sales monitor screen. Sales monitor is what's really going to show you all of your different queues of workflow, help you understand where your sales documents are at, what kind of volume you're seeing. If there's any bottlenecks, you can start to identify. But before I hop over there, I'm just going to touch on the sales document search. This can really be a customer service representative's or a salesperson's best friend. If you're talking to a customer and they want information on an order, you can easily search for that order with whatever detail you have and pull it up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to search for eOrder, which is my e-commerce order document. I heard this customer say that they made a purchase online and they wanted to check on the status. If I go ahead and hit enter, I'm going to get a hit for all of my orders or invoices that have eOrder in the sales doc number. So we can see all of these results here. You'll notice there's different columns here. This is a grid view and is completely configurable. So I can move different fields around. Maybe I want to bring ecom order number over here to the left and my ecom order source over to the left. I can drag and drop that. I can drag below to remove a column, or I can go to the column and band chooser and I can actually choose from many different fields that we have available that pertain to the customer or sales document. Ecom order number and ecom source are not two native fields in either SalesPad or GP, and you might have picked up on that. These are two user-defined fields that were created in SalesPad. So user-defined fields in SalesPad can be used with workflow for GP. They just have to be maintained in SalesPad, which you would get a seat of to maintain. But then you have the ability to pull them into the sales document search view, into the sales monitor. And then the other two areas we support searches for in GP are item and customer. So just for an example, if a customer called and wanted to ask about their e-commerce order 1031, I can go ahead and pull that up. Maybe they're asking about the status of it. I can double click that record to pull it into my sales transaction entry window. And then I can do some further analysis. I can see whether this has been allocated and fulfilled. I can go and look at additional fields here. So maybe in this case, they asked for a status update. I can see that it's in my ready to invoice batch or queue already. So I can confidently say, this order has been shipped already. You should be receiving it in a few days. If they say, well, do you know what my tracking number is? Maybe they missed the email that you sent. I can go to my user defined fields. I can pull up that tracking number, provide it to the customer so that they can follow that shipping themselves. Now I'll go ahead and hop over to the sales monitor. And I do want to just call out, you can unbolt this window from the sales transaction entry screen. You can maximize it, drag it to a different monitor. I'm just going to keep it bolted here for purposes for this demo. Let me make that just a little bit larger again. So in the sales monitor, one of the first things you'll notice on this left-hand side is all the names of the different queues or batches that you have set up in your workflow. And again, this can look different for every business, but there should be, some logical steps that a lot of businesses will see: a new order, picking, shipping, ready to invoice. But a lot of these other queues in here are where those automations are happening, where rule execution is moving documents to, or just where different business rules are being executed. This grid view is going to have very similar functionality to the sales document search. I can search for a specific order here. I could search for a specific salesperson's orders. And this is going to be configurable based on the logged in user, what columns you see here. You can choose to hide certain fields like cost and margin if you'd like. And again, you have the ability to drag and drop those fields as well. You might also notice next to order, you can see this quote, invoices, and returns. So we do support all of those sales document types. So it's not an RMA return, but a sales order return would be visible here. But I can have multiple workflows for these different types of sales documents. And I could even have another workflow for another sales document type. So this might be my retail or my wholesale orders, but I might also do EDI or e-commerce business, and those might have totally different processes. So I might want to have those handled through a different workflow. For the purpose of this demo, we're just going to focus on this GORD order sales document type. So real quick, before I go into some examples, I'm going to pull back up my presentation here. And here I've kind of dissected what a perfect order looks like in my workflow from the last image we saw, where there's quite a bit going on, just to make it a little more simple. So in a perfect order in my workflow, we're going to start in a new order queue. We're going to allocate if there's inventory, of course. Then we're going to go ahead and print that pick ticket. And that's what the smart printing is letting us know, that a print job's happening, or it could be an email as well. Then we'll go to ready to pick, which will let our warehouse team know that they can go ahead and grab this, pack it up, and get ready for shipping. Then we'll do our shipping. And then finally, it would be ready for invoice. So if I pull back open my GP screen, I'm going to go ahead and create a new order. And I'm just going to show an example of a perfect order. So first what I'm going to do is I'm going to exit out of that, pull back open my sales transaction entry screen. And I'll make this bigger again. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new order. I'm going to go ahead and create it for Aaron Fitz Electrical here. I'm going to make sure it starts in my new order queue. And then I can go ahead and add an item here. So I'm going to go ahead and add this MBA M1, which is a MacBook in my demo system. And now, so as long as there's no rules being broken, this should follow that exact same path we were just looking at. I should expect this document to go to my ready to pick queue. There's two different places where you can forward a document in workflow for GP. If you have a record highlighted in Sales Monitor, you can just go ahead and hit forward. Or if you have a order pulled up in the sales transaction entry window, you can go to this additional drop down, scroll down, and with workflow for GP enabled, you'll find this forward button. So I'm going to go ahead and click that. It'll confirm that I want to save the document and forward it, which will hit yes. It'll take just a moment to run through the workflow and decide where it should go. And then we should get a confirmation. So one thing I wanted to pull up real quick was one of the things that happened here in the background as I did that. Oh, so the operation timed out. Let me check my connection here. That looks good. Yep, that all looks good. So real quick, I'll pull up what I have here. So part of this did execute. We sent out that automate. Okay, it looks like it just forwarded. Not sure why we got that error message there, but we'll take a look at that. But one of the things that we did is we sent this order confirmation to the customer, which you can build out a template. You can use smart objects so it knows the customer contact name, can pull in the order name, and then based on the logged in user or the assigned salesperson, you can put in a little custom signature here. And then I've gone ahead and attached a copy of an order confirmation. So this is a configurable report. You could, change the colors, columns, add your logos. This would be maintained on the sales pad and admin side, but you'd be able to build this out and customize it to be the look and feel that you need it to be for your business. And then the second document that was smart printed, or in my case, I just have a preview of a PDF, is a pick ticket. So this order went ahead and moved through to the ready to pick queue. So we've printed this pick ticket. In an ideal situation, it might print out down in the warehouse so that that team knows that this order is ready to go. And I've added barcodes in case we're using any scanning technology or Cavallo's inventory manager. So let me go ahead and refresh here and see if we can find order 60. It should be here, am I ready to pick? So it did look like it wanted to move through. Let's just go ahead, pull that back open. The document definitely had saved. Well, we'll track that one down. It looks like I had a little bit of connectivity issues when I was trying to do that, but you did see the result of the workflow as we'd expect to see it. That did move through our new order queue, print out the order confirmation, and made it into our ready to pick queue. But what happens when we don't have a perfect order? So some of the base level evaluations you might do are just looking for approval or base checking on your orders. So I pulled this section out of that larger diagram. And these are 3 different just basic rules that we might want to evaluate for an order. So is that order below margin? If so, let's go ahead and move it into a margin review queue where a sales manager or the appropriate person can go ahead and provide approval or send it back to the salesperson to adjust that margin. If a customer is on hold, we might want to move them to a specific queue so that we can follow up with that customer. They could be on credit hold, or they could be on hold for another reason, and we might want to reach out to them before allowing an order to process. We don't want to send an order to a customer that they might not be able to pay for, or for a customer that's no longer in business. And that's similar to the credit limit exceeded rule as well. So if a customer has exceeded their credit limit, we might not want to stop that order from being placed completely, but we'll want to move that to a place where we're not allocating inventory to it and we're not actually sending the product to the customer while we're trying to get that credit issue resolved. So let's go ahead and take a look at that here in Workflow for GP. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new order that I know is going to break that margin rule. So if I go ahead to the order, that, and we'll do customer, we'll pick Brock's Pharmacy. Date's good on there. We're going to start off in our new order queue again. And now I'm going to add one of my products, an iPhone 128 gigabyte. Go ahead and add that line item. But now I'm going to change the price. Maybe your sales team has the ability to offer discounts, negotiate margin, whatever the case might be. They're manually typing in a price that gets fat fingered. And you want to make sure that you're always reaching a specific margin amount. My rule in my workflow is set to 20%. So anything below 20% is going to get flagged as below margin, and we're not going to go ahead and process that order. So now that I've made that change, I know, because I've already done the math ahead of time, that $620 is below that acceptable margin. I'm going to go ahead and try and forward this document. So we can see that that was a success. This order has been moved to my margin review queue. Now the sales manager or whoever that might be can go ahead and review this order. It might be part of a larger deal, getting a foot in the door for getting more business. So maybe we go ahead and approve it. But at least now it has the right visibility for whoever's accountable for making that decision. The next example I want to go through is for another order, which we'll just do this real quick instead of exiting out again. And we're going to create an order for one of my customers that I know is on hold, Kensington. And you do get a pop-up in GP, right? There are different settings. Just like with the credit limit, you can create a password to prevent that order from being created. But maybe there is good reason you do want these orders created. You want the visibility to the demand, and you do want to try and resolve whatever issue might be with that customer so you can get that sale. Or, your salesperson goes ahead and just flies through, hits continue, doesn't notice they're on hold or credit review, and keeps the process going. So I'm going to go ahead and make sure that we start off in our new order queue once again. And now I'm going to go ahead and add a 20-inch monitor to this customer. So that all looks good. I've tabbed onto my next line. Now, if I go ahead and forward this, I'd expect, since this customer is on hold, that they end up in my customer hold queue. It'll be just a moment and get that confirmation again that this order was moved to my customer hold queue. Now, all this is happening. The sales monitor, the tables are updating in real time. I have mine set to refresh manually just for visibility purposes, but you can have this updating every 30 seconds to every 20 minutes, or just always be able to hit this refresh button. So now that I do that, I can see these orders I've just created. Order 62, order 61 are in those queues that we expected them to be in. So now there's complete visibility for where your sales orders are at in your business. And lastly, I wanted to go ahead and do a credit limit example. So I'm going to go ahead and switch this again. And let's create an order for a customer that I know has exceeded their credit limit. So central distribution. And we're going to go ahead and add, we'll just do another MacBook for this customer. And as soon as I tab off that line, I get the message, this transaction exceeds the customer limit. Do you want to proceed? I'm going to go ahead and hit yes, because we want to capture the demand for this item. And I'm going to forward once again. And we should end up in our credit limit review queue. We did, success. So those are a couple examples of different rules that you can enforce. And in my workflow, I'm moving them to a review queue so that somebody has the proper visibility to it. But you could also make that rule execute, whereas this order won't get out of the new order queue. It won't even let you proceed to the next step. It'll kind of let the salesperson or customer service representative, whoever's entering that order, know, hey, there's a problem with this order, fix it before it can be forwarded. You could absolutely have it loop into itself instead of forwarding to another queue. So the next examples I wanted to talk about have a little more to do with routing orders than necessarily executing a rule based on the customer or sales document themselves. So this view is still a lot going on in it, but it's a little more clean than the overall view. But there's a couple different scenarios I want to show, and I'm just going to go along them here in the diagram first. So a lot of our customers do drop shipping. Maybe they do customized products and they don't do the customization themselves. So the manufacturer will actually send it to the end customer. So we want to capture those scenarios whenever a drop ship item or a drop ship order is created. And we want to bypass a lot of these other queues or batches that we normally go through in our workflow. So we're going to go to our drop ship queue, then we can create a drop ship PO, and then that order can go directly to ready to invoice. Another scenario would be for back orders. When we have an order with an item on it that's out of stock. So that's going to go through to our allocate queue. And if we don't have that product on hand, it's going to recognize that and move it to a back order queue. Now, if it's a singular item on that order, you can go ahead and leave it in the back order queue until you can create a purchase order and link that, or you can go ahead and wait for an order to come in. Maybe there's an incoming shipment, you know that product's going to be there. Wait till then, allocate it, and then it'll do a recheck, and then it'll go back to allocate, know that you have that product, and move it along in your process. But if you have 2 items on an order or more, and some of those items are out of stock and some are available, you might want to do some different processing. You might want to split that order, send to the customer what's available now, and then just leave the other bit of the order in back order. We have rules and automations that can help take care of that will show. Or you could have another scenario where a customer might request that you ship complete. So if not everything's in stock, they want to wait until everything is, and then you can go ahead and ship it to them. We also have rules that will handle that. The last one for this routing that I want to talk about is for the rush order. Maybe a customer is in very good standing with you. You have service level agreements with them. You want to prioritize their orders when they come in. There's a way you can do that with workflow to make sure that picking is processed faster and make sure that awareness is driven to your team. And I misspoke, not the last one I want to show. Another example is for future orders. So there's a lot of different businesses. A lot of our customers in the construction building specifically might get orders for projects that are 6 months out, and they don't necessarily want to allocate and set aside inventory for a project that's 6 months out. They want to capture the demand, certainly, but maybe they want to wait till they're within 2 weeks or a month before they actually go ahead and allocate that product, move it to a staging area, so that they're able to fulfill orders with more near-term demand sooner. We have rules that can handle that as well, and then automations that will evaluate that for you, so you don't have to worry about forgetting about that upcoming project. We'll do that for you with our automation tool. So that's what you can see here in the future evaluation. If the requested ship date's a certain amount of time in the future, we'll route that appropriately. So let's go ahead and take a look at a couple of those examples. This again, we'll start fresh. So the first example I'm going to go through is for a drop ship item. And the one I have set up in my environment happens to be a, let's see, send it to West Central Distributors, happens to be a koozie that this customer might want to order, get their company name on it. They're going to hand it out at a promotional event. So I'm going to go ahead and add that item. We'll go ahead and, we'll do 5. It's just a demo example. And I'm going to go ahead and check that drop ship box. And now that we know that it's a drop ship item, workflow is going to recognize that as well. And it's going to go ahead and move this to that drop ship queue where we'd then be able to create that drop ship PO and then forward this to our ready to invoice queue. So let's go ahead and forward. Would you like to save and forward? Yes, I would. And we have successfully moved that document to the dropship queue. So now I have visibility that I have several orders in my dropship queue. We need to go ahead and create purchase orders for those, and then we can move them to our invoice queue. Next example, wanted to do back order and kind of show that splitting example and how that works in workflow. So I've actually, in this case, and again, you can always click on any of these documents to pull it up in the sales transaction entry window. I've gone ahead and created this order ahead of time, have it in the right queue for a MacBook that we do have in stock. And then we have a Bluetooth speaker that's not currently in stock. So this order should go ahead and move to my back order queue. So go ahead and do. And if you knew that you always wanted to split orders, we kind of bypass this next step that we're going to do. You could have these back ordered orders always automatically go through the splitting queue, so you don't have to have another point of interaction here. But if you do want to evaluate if the customer requested for ship complete, or you might want to create a PO manually because you might want to, provide that for more demand than just this one order, you could absolutely stop in a back order queue like I'm doing now. So we now know that we're in back order. One of these items is out of stock, one's in stock. But now I do want to go ahead and I want to process the part of the order we can fulfill and leave the rest back ordered. So I'm just going to go ahead and forward again. It's going to think for a moment. And what we actually do through our workflow and our automation is we go ahead and split the document and we save off that parent document and then create 2 documents, a point 1 and a point 2. In this instance, since we had one item fulfillable and one that was not. So we did see the pick ticket pop up here. That's for the MacBook that we did have in stock. Go ahead and exit out of that. Again, we saw that success message. If I go ahead and refresh here and go to my back order queue, I'll see that 58.2 here for that speaker, that Bluetooth speaker is in back order. So we can really help with handling that situation, make sure that you're getting out the products that you have as quick as you can to the customer, but that you're also creating that awareness that there is an item that is out of stock, whether you just need to wait for the product to arrive or create a purchase order. The last example I wanted to take a look at was a future order. So you can see order 12 here has a requested ship date of 8/25. Again, my rule is set up to look at anything that's more than 2 weeks out. So I'm going to go ahead and open that order. I can see the date there, 8/25. I can see the requested ship date, again, is about a month out. So I would expect this order to not allocate and go ahead and sit in my future queue. So let me go ahead and forward this. And success, that was moved to the future queue. So now we'll wait till we're within that period of 14 days. and we can use an automation tool to actually do that evaluation for us. So that's actually the next thing I wanted to show, is how you can pair our automation tool with workflow for GP to get a lot more out of it. So in this scenario, I have several orders in my future queue. There's some that have dates that are now 13 days out. So if we go ahead and evaluate that rule, they should go ahead and move into our ready to pick queue if we're able to allocate. So I'm just going to pull up another screen really quick. So this is actually a window from SalesPad where a lot of the configuration and admin for workflow for GP can and will happen, but this can be paired and set up with workflow for GP. So I've created a rule that does GORD future allocation. It'll look at every document in my future queue, and it will evaluate to see if that order's requested ship date is now within 14 days. If it's true, it'll stay in the queue. If it's false, if it's not, if it's within 13 days rather, it'll go ahead and forward that document. I'm going to run this manually just for demo purposes, but the way this would actually work in a live setting is you'd have the ability to set an automation schedule that you can use predefined times for. You can have this run daily, weekly, once a day, or the predefined options. That's where you can set it up to run every 5, every 15 minutes if you choose to. And then that'll run in the background and it'll just check that queue and try and do that forward each time it runs. But for this purpose, I'm going to go ahead and do the run now, which actually, real quick before I do that, let me go ahead and not have that document locked up. I'm going to go ahead and run now. Okay, you might have noticed that there's several order 20 and order 40. We got pick tickets for. And then I did get a successful task window here that ran in 3 seconds. So let's go take a look over here now. So I haven't refreshed yet, but it looked like order 20 and 40, who are just 13 days out, went ahead and forwarded. So if I go ahead and hit refresh here, I no longer have those orders in my future queue, and they've gone ahead and moved to my ready to pick queue. So this would be running in the background, automatically evaluating that rule for you to check to see when that order gets within 14 days, and then go ahead and do that allocation for you. Another rule that would work very similar, you could set this up for your back order queue. Maybe you're waiting for product to become available. You have a linked purchase order to your sales order, and you don't want someone to have to manually pay attention to when that inventory becomes available. As soon as it does, you want to go ahead and allocate it to those back ordered orders. So I have a handful of orders here in my back order queue, and I have another rule that's going to work very similar to the one we just showed. I can pull that up again just so we can see it real quick. So it's another rule for allocate to back order. Setting it up pretty simple, just selecting the queue you want to look at and the batch forward that you want to check for. But I'm going to go ahead and run this now. And that worked instantly. We can see that order 8, order 24 went ahead and allocated these items and is printing out that pick ticket. And looks like that one took just about 9 seconds to run for the back order queue. And now if we come back and do another refresh here on back order, we had about 8 or 9 documents in there. Yep, we lost those 2 that we saw, 8 and 24 there. So those are 2 examples of how you can evaluate some of the rules you've set up in your workflow and have those run on a more automated basis. But there's also other tools within the automation software that you can utilize. For example, we have 3 documents in our ready to invoice queue right now. Perhaps once a day, we want to go take a look at anything that's in that ready to invoice queue, and we want to go ahead and transfer those to invoices. So there's another automation job that can be ran for that. I'm just going to go ahead and hit run now on this one. Then can show the pop-up once that happens. So that one ran in about 5 seconds. And now if I go ahead and do a refresh on my ready to invoice, there's no longer any documents in there. Those were actually transferred to invoices. If I come over to my invoice tab now, there's somewhere in this ready to post. Some of these georgs right here, and some of these invoices were created. That happened automatically. I didn't have to transfer that to an invoice. You can also build in different rules and criteria to make sure that we're not transferring anything to an invoice that's not ready. Hopefully that ready to invoice queue is your indicator that it is, but if there was something that wasn't fulfilled or something like that, it wouldn't go ahead and allow it to transfer to an invoice. So I'm going to pull back up our slide here. So that concludes the demonstration portion. But what was some of the value that we delivered? We saw how we could save time and money with process automation. Time where an employee has to manually intervene or execute some of these processes themselves, we could eliminate. And then also by capturing things like margin and discount percents, we can make sure that we're maximizing our profitability. Another thing was streamlined document and invoice management. A lot of steps that would require, handoffs or you could lose visibility or accountability for. Those things are going to be streamlined with automation and rules, making sure those go to the right place at the right time. And third, with the sales monitor, didn't spend a whole lot of time in there, but you always have that visibility into where your documents are. You know exactly the count of documents you have created, what the value of those documents are, which ones have broken which rules, which ones need attention. You have total visibility in that process. And lastly, for any of those steps which would be manual, you're eliminating a lot of the chance for human error and you're improving your consistency. Talked about a lot of this today in workflow. We saw the automated workflows in action. We saw allocation logic in our workflow. And I talked about how workflow for GP can work with Cavallo's e-commerce connectors. And the fourth one here, really, which was also mentioned, is that Cavallo Inventory Manager can also be used with GP standalone in workflow for GP. So beyond just the workflow, organizing your orders and running some of these rules, there are other areas where we can deliver a lot of value for those users who are staying in GP. And Jody, I'll pass back off to you.
Thank you, Mike. If you have not already registered, please do so for Panels 23. Panels is our most anticipated event of the year. This year, we're holding it August 7th through 9th in Grand Rapids. There'll be 2 full days of educational sessions, networking opportunities, and a little bit of fun thrown in. For more information, you can use the QR code on your screen, or you can visit us at cavallo.com/panels23. And with that, we will now open it up for Q&A. If you have not already done so, now is the time to submit any questions you may have for Mike. And again, you can do that using the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen. Okay, we do have a couple of questions here. Mike, the first question is, what are some of the differences between using workflow for GP versus using workflow for SalesPad?
Yeah, great question. So one of the big differences between workflow and SalesPad and workflow and GP is that SalesPad does also support other type of business object workflows. And what I mean by that is purchase order, customer, item, whereas GP is just focused on the sales document being quote, invoice, return, and orders. And then with workflow and SalesPad, there are several plugins or automations that align with different modules or tools that are strictly in SalesPad, and obviously those wouldn't be available to users just using it in GP.
Okay, our next question is, if I already have workflow in SalesPad, do I also have access to workflow for GP?
No, you would not. Workflow for GP is a separate SKU. But if you were to purchase and implement workflow for GP, your workflows that are already set up in SalesPad would transfer over. You wouldn't have to do any rebuilding or any modifications. Those workflows would just be visible and usable within GP.
Okay. We have another question. Are administration and configuration of workflows done in SalesPad or in GP?
Yeah, so the administration configuration would mostly happen in SalesPad. There are some settings and rules that you can tweak and change in GP directly. But as far as building out those different queues, applying the rules, setting any automations to run, that would all happen in SalesPad.
Okay. Last call for questions. Anybody else have anything they want to ask Mike during the Q&A portion? No? Okay, if that's it, I'd like to thank everybody for joining us today. I'd like to thank our presenter, Mike Raden. If you'd like to dive deeper into your organization's specific need, see a demo of any Cavallo products, please reach out to your account executive, or if you don't already have one, you can use the URL on the screen to request a demo. And finally, when you exit the webinar, there will be a short survey. We value your feedback, so if you could please take just a quick minute, it's very short, it's only 3 or 4 questions to complete that when you leave today's webinar. That would be much appreciated. And again, we want to thank you very much for joining us today, and we hope you have a great rest of the day. Thank you very much.
Thank you.